Hello, everyone. Royce Eddings here, and I want to thank you all for joining me on my live podcast tonight. We have this every Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, on my YouTube channel, Royce in the House, which also has multiple other playlists. A lot of fun stuff to look at, in addition to the music shows. So, anyway, tonight we're going to be discussing one of my very favorite artists. At times, he's been my favorite artist, Eric Burdon, and Eric Burdon and the Animals. Okay. Now, no conversation about Eric Burdon is complete without discussing at least where he came from and how it all got started, where he was introduced to America. He was introduced to America during the British invasion in 1964. And I just want to talk about the ranking of the top bands of the British invasion for just a second, okay? All of the sources agree that number one and two are one, the Beatles, two, the Rolling Stones. You won't find any source, any list of top bands from the British invasion that doesn't include the Beatles as number one, the Stones number two. After number two, it starts to vary from pole to pole. You've got Eric Burdon and the Animals, of course. You've got the Kinks. You've got the Who, and just countless bands, even the Dave Clark Five and Jerry and the Pacemakers. I mean, it's just endless. There were so many. Now, for me, once I get past the Beatles one, the Stones two, I personally, and this is my personal opinion, we all have them, I put Eric Burdon as number three, ahead of the Who and the Kinks in the top five. Okay, so as a young man growing up in Newcastle, England, Eric was listening to his idols, Ray Charles, Bo Diddley, and mainly he was listening to American blues. Eric Burdon and the Animals was a blues band. They toned the blues down just a little bit to appeal to more of a mass audience, but they were a blues band. And so that was his roots, the blues. And it's been said that Eric Burdon helped to shape rock and roll's DNA. His soulful voice, he's got an incredible voice. It's ranked in a list of top voices of all time in music. And it's really on display in songs like House of the Rising Sun. That's one of my all-time favorite songs by any band. He's got one of the most powerful, distinctive voices in rock and roll, member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since, let's see, what year? 94, and hailed by Rolling Stone as one of the 100 greatest voices of all time, topping the charts for over 5 decades. Let me check the chat out here for a minute, guys. Bear with me. Got a lot of friends that have joined us. And I'm solo at the moment, so I can I don't have time when one of my co-hosts is talking to look at the chat. So we've got Michael Nolan's going to be here. He's running a little bit late. Hi, Chris Elliott. Hi, Angela. Jeff Davidson. Good to see you, brother. Dan Goucher, thank you so much for showing up. The Music Sanctuary, appreciate seeing you, bro. Okay, so I've covered the guys and gals that are in the chat so far. So we're going to move on. We're going to continue talking about one of my all-time favorites, Eric Burdon. Okay. Burdon released nearly 50 albums in his 50 years, 5 decades, okay, as a frontman of the Animals and War, and the band War. Remember, Eric Burdon Declares War with Spill the Wine. That was a huge hit also. that one took me by surprise, okay? But I loved it all the same. He shared the stage with legends such as Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Witherspoon, Otis Redding, blues great Otis Redding. Now, that's an incredible voice there for you, too. So anyway, hey, Caitlin joined us. Hi, Kate. How you doing, girl? A long string of hits followed. I mean, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, the Vietnam era anthems like We Gotta Get Out of This Place, Sky Pilot. And I love those songs. I have an iTunes playlist, and I've got these songs all in there. They're favorites of mine. He also pioneered some of the psychedelic San Francisco sound with classics like San Francisco Nights and Monterey. Okay, outstanding songs. I mean, this guy is just incredible. Absolutely love these songs. Some of my favorites of all time. The Animals consisted of John Still, Hilton Valentine, Alan Price, and Chas Chandler, who you've heard me talk about. He actually wound up quitting the animals, and he was the bass player for the Animals. He wound up quitting the Animals to actually manage people like Jimi Hendrix and others. Okay, it was Chas Chandler, former bass player of the Animals, that took Jimi Hendrix to England, where he became a big star. He had three hits in the top 10. Anyway, okay, so when he arrived in the U.S. for the first time in 1964, the Animals were riding high as part of the British invasion, of course, that was spearheaded, like I already mentioned, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones as 1 and 2. Eric Burdon in the Animals had topped the charts in both the UK and in the USA. Now we're going to talk about, okay, eventually, his band had split up. There were numerous iterations of the Animals. But eventually, he ended up in California in Laurel Canyon. And you know how much I love Laurel Canyon. I was supposed to tour Laurel Canyon 2 weeks ago with famed groupie Pamela DeBars. Betty and I were both going to go down there. We're going to spend the night down there. We're going to go on tour with Pamela DeBars. She takes us through not only Laurel Canyon, but she takes us into Hollywood and, goes by a lot of the famous nightclubs and things like that. We're really looking forward to it. And then she contacted us and said it was going to be too hot. So bummed about that, but we'll catch up on that eventually. Okay. So eventually wound up in Laurel Canyon, where he got to know, rock icons, all the rock icons. I've covered that Laurel Canyon in 2 different podcasts. I mean, I love that show, those shows, and everybody was there. But he also became really good friends with actor Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen went flying by on his motorcycle one day, and Eric go, "What the hell?" Eric jumped on his motorcycle and started chasing Steve McQueen. And they wound up talking, became great friends. And there's a bunch of good stories about Eric Burdon and Steve McQueen. Okay, let me check the chat here real quick, folks. Eventually, I'll have some co-hosts on here, and we'll be able to spread the duties out a little bit. We've got JB Tharp. JB, my brother, you want to hear a good guitar player and singer, JB Tharp. He's been traveling all around the country playing. We love the guy. He's just fantastic. And I'm always listening to his songs on Facebook and stuff like that. So let's see. Okay, so Eric Burdon reflects on his 50-year journey. Okay, 50 years on, and his current wife of 18 years, Mariana, who's a lawyer and his manager. And boy, did he need all that. He was cheated so badly by previous managers, record labels, and all of them. And they live in a Spanish-style villa in the town of Ojai. Betty and I are getting ready to go to Ojai. I've been through Ojai on my motorcycle at the foot of the mountain, 70 miles outside of Los Angeles. I'll just throw this in right now. It's been about 10 years now. Betty and I were in Laughlin, Nevada. They have an annual Laughlin Harley-Davidson motorcycle ride. Several 100,000 bikes show up. It's actually mandatory for most of the biker clubs like the Hells Angels and all of that. That's a mandatory run from them. You have to go if you're in one of those clubs. So it's really crowded there. There's a lot of parking lots, have bands playing them, stages set up. And then they have some bigger venues. I've seen ZZ Top there. But I've also seen Eric Burdon there. Betty and I picked up a little flyer in a newsstand and started to read what was going to be going on in Laughlin during that stay. And come to find out, Eric Burdon and the Animals was playing directly across the street from us. It just blew my mind. I didn't even know it was still alive, to be perfectly honest with you. And so I immediately called them. We got some great tickets. It wasn't much bigger than a large house. I mean, it was a small venue. Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It was a small venue. There was no such thing as a bad seat in there. And you know what? The highlight of that was when he started singing House of the Rising Sun. Everybody in that room was on their feet, and we're all singing at the top of our lungs, House of the Rising Sun. And I'll never forget that. That was an amazing, amazing moment for me. Okay. Eric Burdon reflects on his 50-year career. Let's get back to that, folks. Okay. So he has no regrets about his youthful persona. Truth is, we were real, okay? Eric Burdon and the guys were real. There was nothing put on or fake. We're acutely aware of the fact that we were working class kids from a mining town, and we couldn't escape our past, but we could change our destiny, okay? You have to embrace who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. to become the person you really are. I'm proud of my working class roots. And that's a great statement to make, you know. In a lot of these little towns after at the end of World War II, I mean, you were lucky to be able to get a job at all, you know, and working in mines, working in factories. It's just like the show I did on Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin's the Lost Jam session a month ago. They grew up in Birmingham, England, and it was like a factory town. And they didn't want to grow up and work in factories, so they really practiced hard and became fantastic musicians. Another favorite band of mine. I just listened to 3 Black Sabbath albums last night: Paranoid, Sabotage, and Volume 4. Okay. Okay. So the Animals had escaped their upbringing, but the original lineup swiftly scattered. Like I said, there'd been numerous different lineups. The keyboard player, Alan Price, left to pursue a successful solo career. Bassist Chance Chandler, which I mentioned already, he would mold the careers of Jimi Hendrix, Slade, and others as a manager. Burdon's arrival in California coincided with the era of flower power and student protest. He really got into it. He was full bore in that whole psychedelic era. Okay. He recorded psychedelic albums like Wind of Change, and his band played the legendary Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 alongside the Who, Hendrix, and Janis Joplin. Okay. So these guys were really getting around. Okay. It was such a star-studded attraction, a massive turnout of up to 90,000 fans, okay, making it an event that cemented California's position as the capital of the counterculture. And this is when, the Summer of Love, Haight-Ashbury, 100,000 people migrated to the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury area. He recently played his 50th anniversary. He recently played at the 50th anniversary of the Monterey Pop Festival. And it was clearly an emotional occasion for him, 50th anniversary, okay. He was overwhelmed, he says quietly. I realized I was one of the, here's why Eric was overwhelmed. He realized he's one of the only acts still standing. All of my friends from that time are gone. And what friends they were. He stole his first wife, Angie King, from Andy Summers, a guitar player in the Animals. So he stole his band member's wife, okay, but who went on to find greater fame with the Police. The band member went on to find greater fame with the Police, only to lose the wife that he stole from his band member to his friend Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix stole his wife. Jimi Hendrix stole Eric Burdon's wife, who he stole from his bandmate. Okay, what a crazy story that is. Okay, let me throw a few comments up, guys. I got to share some of these great comments here. Okay, we got Dan's got some great comments. My buddy has seen Eric Burdon a bunch of times the last 20 years. That's fantastic. Caitlin, the favorite. Chris Elliott. I saw Burdon twice at the local blues fest. He stole the show both times. What a great singer. What a great singer. What a voice. Nice, Don. That is nice. Lovely, Chris. Dan, okay. The Eric Burdon Band made 2 albums released in 74 and 75, both excellent and heavy. I've recently, well, I say recently, it's been about 3 months. I bought Eric Burdon Retrospective, a 2-album set, orange vinyl, beautiful orange vinyl, and it's got all his great hits on it. It's just fantastic. And sometimes these albums, the remastered albums and stuff like that, don't come out that great. But this one, I couldn't find fault with it. It was great. Eric stole from the Police. Yeah, he stole from the Police. Then Jimmy stole from him. Jeff Davidson. Oh, my friend Jeff. I didn't know Andy Summers was in the Animals. All right. Dan Coucher. Okay, folks. I'm going to leave the chat and get back to the story. And Michael Nolan should be joining us soon. And possibly even Bruce Collin, from the R&B show. Okay, so despite the fact that Hendrix left with Eric Burdon's wife, or she left with him, I should say. Despite this, the 2 rock stars actually remained on good terms. And Hendrix's death from a drug overdose the day after the pair were on stage at London's Ronnie Scott's really tore Eric up. It really did. Yeah, like I said, he remained good friends with Hendrix to the end. Most of these guys were fooling around on their own, traveling around on tours and stuff. Then there was a time John Lennon immortalized Eric Burdon as the Eggman in the Beatles' I Am the Walrus, after being regaled with him at the tale of a fling that he had in an incident with a splattered egg. Had to do with fellatio and a splattered egg. So John Lennon nicknamed him the Eggman. Okay. Another occasion, everyone's favorite Hellraiser, Eric Burdon, ran Jim Morrison out of his LA home with the .44 Magnum pistol. Okay. When the Doors singer overstayed his welcome as a house guest. Ran Jim Morrison of the Doors out of his house with a .44 Magnum. Has anybody heard that story before? Okay, but I think the favorite. There's thousands of stories, about Eric Burdon. I mean, he just attracted things wherever he went. But the last I ever saw, says Burdon of Jim Morrison, he went out to become another rock and roll cat. Before he went out to become another rock and roll casualty, found dead in his bath in the Paris apartment 71. So basically what I was trying to say, I took a little break from the story. He chased Jim Morrison out of his house with a .44 Magnum, and that was the last he ever saw Jim Morrison before his death. So that's pretty sad. Okay. Now this story I really loved. He left and moved to Laurel Canyon. And you know how much I love Laurel Canyon. I've covered 2 shows. I was supposed to go on tour 2 weeks ago with Pamela DeBar's, famed groupie, author, actress. And I love that. I could do another show eventually on Laurel Canyon. It's just so much fun. So many rock stars there. So many incidents. It's just off the charts. Okay. But he's standing outside of his home one day and a motorcycle races by full speed. So Eric Burdon was a big motorcycle aficionado. He ran in the garage, jumped on his motorcycle, started chasing the motorcycle that went screaming by him. And the guy finally pulled over, and it was none other than actor and a actor I just absolutely loved was Steve McQueen. Actor Steve McQueen, big star on riding motorcycles. He was in that famous World War II movie. They escaped out of the concentration camp where he had to jump a barbed wire fence. But he was a talented guy. I mean, his acting was fantastic, and he was a great motorcycle rider. Okay, so he chased down film star Steve McQueen, who had torn up the landscape, and they were tearing up the landscape on Harleys and Triumphs, racing each other to Peggy Sue Diners on Interstate 15 for a Buddy Holly cheeseburger. Let me tell you about Peggy Sue's Diner, okay? Betty and I have been there with friends. We used to ride our motorcycles back and forth to Laughlin, back and forth to Vegas. And Peggy Sue's Diner is on the way to or from Vegas on Interstate 15. You have to get off at the right time to go there. But it is an absolute shrine to early rock and roll. Like Burdon said, they were going there for a Buddy Holly hamburger. When you walk inside, it's pictures and posters and cardboard cutouts, all early rock stars. It is about the funnest damn place you can go. And it's kind of like a 50s soda fountain. You get malts and milkshakes, burgers. They're all named after rock stars and stuff like that. And I highly recommend anybody that's going to go to Vegas and get on I-15. I live on the Central California coast. So I-15 we used to call it the LA freeway. When I lived in Southern California, you took pretty much I-15 the entire way. Now I live a little further north, so I have to take another way till I get to the I-15. Anyway, nonsense. So Peggy Sue's Diner. So they would race through the desert. And I'm going to tell you what, that's not 30 minutes away. That's more like, I'm going to say, 3 hours away. Okay. A little closer to Laurel Canyon, though. A little closer. It may have been hour and a half or so away. They would race to Peggy Sue's Diner to get a Buddy Holly burger. I think that's great. Okay. And that's not all they did. Okay. I've heard other stories of them eating peyote buttons. Peyote buttons, very psychedelic experience. I've never done it, but I can remember when I was in high school, a friend of mine's older brother told me the story. He was called by somebody wanting to know if he had any drugs. And he goes, "No, I don't have anything right now, but I can tell you where there's some peyote buttons." He told him where to find them out in the Nevada desert. And it told him to only take a certain amount. Well, the guy got out there. I'm not throwing names out there. One of them might be watching the show right now. Guy got out there and ate way too much. The next thing you know, he's in the hospital, freaking out and yelling the name over and over again of my friend's older brother that told him where this was. So, of course, he got paid a visit by the narcotics agents wanting to know what he had to do with that. And of course, I didn't have anything to do with it. The guy's delirious. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, but he had eaten peyote buttons. So anyway, I've heard stories of Steve McQueen and Eric Burdon eating peyote buttons and looking for UFOs out in the desert. Okay, and I believe them. I believe all the stories I've heard about Eric Burdon. So anyway, he was proud to be one of the voices of the '60s generation. You know, the Woodstock generation, the protest generation, sounding the alarm, which is still being heard today. And it is still being heard today. I think we're backsliding, and Eric even thinks we're backsliding in it in one of his books. But anyway, so that's pretty much my story. There's a lot more we could say. I mean, again, Jim Morrison was absolutely out of control at the time when he chased him out with the 44 Magnum. Anyway, so let's see who's in the chat and what's going on here. Okay, we've got Dan Goucher. Good to see you, buddy. My good friend, JB, Dr. Rick. Yes, he did all his own stunts, and he was a great stuntman. Okay, the name of the movie, the World War II movie, wasn't that The Great Escape, where Steve McQueen escaped on a German motorcycle? The Great Escape. I've seen that movie several times. It's fantastic. Okay, yeah, I still. Okay, stop even more than sun cigarettes because more laid back grooves. Okay, Dr. Rick, Dan, I think he said he'd had time to reflect on the old tapes and wanted to get them out. Interesting. Caitlin, our own Caitlin Stoddard, guys. We've got some people here with some great podcasts. Okay, Caitlin's show is really good. Let's see if I go up a little bit. Okay, well, I can't get too high right now, but there's a lot of people. Well, the Music Sanctuary's got a nice podcast on YouTube, a good show, and I highly recommend you go to the Music Sanctuary. You go to Caitlin Stoddard, and check out their shows. You're gonna love them. Go ahead and subscribe. A lot of great music from back then. There was so much great music from back then. I lived the British invasion in real time. I was in 6th grade when the Beatles hit town, and it was just like pandemonium after that. It's like nothing we ever seen before. There must have been 100+ bands came from England. It was like every one of them was good. They all had music on the radio. Michael Nolan, Link, okay, my man, is coming right up. Michael, the link is up. Just hit it and we'll bring you right on. We'll give you a little update. I've covered the majority of my story. Doing a solo, it kind of goes a lot quicker. So anyway, let's see. We've got Caitlin. No pink slip from Michael. He is a professor. Okay, let's see. What did it have? Michael, you are late. Where's your hall pass? Absolutely. Dan, give him the link, Ray. Okay. Angela, whatever. So anyway, there's a lot more we could say. I mean, Eric Burdon and the Animals. I can't think of any song that I've tried to play more on the guitar than "House of the Rising Sun." Going all the way back to junior high school, "House of the Rising Sun," and it's just a beautiful song. But it's only beautiful because of Eric's voice. It's actually very simple to play. The chords are pretty simple, but Eric's voice is what makes that song. Don't be sassy, lady. That's what I love about the chat. You know, everybody's having fun here, and that really makes the show. You guys are all appreciated so much. You know, I have 257 counting tonight videos on my YouTube channel, and they're not all music based. I have why we love the Central Coast, tours of famous places, and I visit places as far and wide as, you know, Clint Eastwood's Ranch for dinner, and then the Hog Breath Inn he owned for 27 years, downtown Carmel. Clint Eastwood was the mayor of Carmel, and I thought that was great. So he's heavily invested up there. He bought that, I think it was a 16-acre ranch, the Mission Ranch. Developers were going to put condominiums on it. Most of the town folk didn't really want it, but it looked like it was going to be going that way. So Clint stepped in and bought it and just restored it, put a nice restaurant there. He's got a little motel there and a lot of houses you can rent and just a place where you can throw parties. It's just a really cool place. You sat in the restaurant, you know, up against the rail, and we could see the ocean out there in Carmel. It was just amazing. Let's see. We have, look at this. Sean McCall, how you doing, buddy? The organ solo is great. Yeah, the organ solo is amazing. Amazing. That was a great band. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for commenting. Okay, Michael, where are you at? What's going on here? Eric Burdon is still performing. He's still out there. Dan, the song "Anything Is Beautiful." You know, I would like to hear from people in the chat. I named as the top 5 from the British invasion, and everyone agrees that it was the Beatles 1, the Rolling Stones 2. I put Eric Burdon as 3. Now, none of the actual listings I've seen actually showed him as 3. It was as high as 5, but the Who's in there, and the Kinks. The Kinks usually show up as number 3. Maybe the Who, either the Who or Eric Burdon 4 and 5. Eric Burdon 6 on one of them, 5 on one of them. So, what do you guys say? Who would you rank behind the Beatles and Stones, if you would even give it to the Beatles and Stones as 1 and 2? Who would you rank for the next 3 bands behind the Beatles and Stones? Numbers 3, 4, and 5 from the British invasion. I'd like to hear from the chat what your guys' opinions are. Alan Price, absolutely. Okay. All right. So let's see, Caitlin, I missed your show the other day, but I did watch it on the rebound and commented, and you answered my comment. Okay, here we go. Sean's got, I would put the Animals at 3, the Kinks a hair behind. You know what? I put the Animals at 3. And it was, it could be a toss-up for me between the Kinks and the Who. Hi, Michael. How you doing, everybody?
I'm doing fine, Royce. I'm sorry I'm late.
No
I've
worries.
been covered in paint. We got the spring cleaning. Yeah, we got the spring cleaning at the Noland household a bit late. We're doing it in the middle of summer.
Oh, good. Yeah. My work never ends here. But of course, we're talking about Eric Burdon and the Animals.
Yeah.
And we started out right now the chat is giving me their ranking. And the reason I'm saying that is because I started the show with the ranking of the British invasion's top 5. And it was irresputable that the Beatles are always ranked on everything you find as number 1, and the Stones are always on number 2. And that's where it starts to change. Then after that's where it starts to change up. You've got the Kinks, the Kinks, the Who, and Eric Burdon and the Animals are usually like in that next 3, maybe 4. I personally ranked Eric Burdon 3, but maybe the Who or the Kings. I like Eric Burdon's music better than either one of the other bands, but I probably like the Who better than the Kinks as far as listening pleasure. But as you can see right now, Dan has just ranked the Kinks number 3, the Who number 5, and the Small Faces. I'm sorry. Number 3, the Kinks, number 4, the Who, and number 5, the Small Faces. Okay. And prior to that, Sean came in and said he would put the Animals at 3 and the Kinks just a hair behind. Okay. Chris Elliott's saying the Who, the Yardbirds, then the Animals. And yes, the Yardbirds is always up in the top 5 to 7 also.
Yeah. I was surprised there wasn't more votes for the Yardbirds. But the Yardbirds, if they are truly one of the, recognized, I'm not quite sure when they hit the States. There is a fine line with that, but
that's true.
I would certainly consider them in a broad spect one of the British invasion bands.
Yeah,
and
if you include
and if you do that, Royce, then I would consider them number 3, underneath the Beatles and then the Stones, and then you've got the Yardbirds, and you know why I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, and I you know what though, a close 4th vying would be absolutely Eric Burdon and the Animals, or just Eric Burdon, really, because I respect all of his career, but when you think about him, you already covered some of this stuff, but he once said that his childhood was like a Dickens tale. Dickens could have written his childhood. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. He grew up in a mining town. What kind of a future do you have?
Yeah. And so when you grow up in that environment, I grew up in a poor environment, as you know, Royce. You become one of two kinds of people. You melt into the background to survive, or you say, no freaking way with this shit.
Yeah, right.
And you learn to get along, right?
Right.
And win or lose, you got to stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
Eric Burdon is that exact kind of person,
right?
And then when he got involved with the band that had started as a jazz lounge act in 1958, as soon as he arrives on the scene, they become the Animals. So I think it was a mistake. They didn't just call him Eric Burdon and the Animals right away. But I think it's sad that it wasn't the first guy that left. It was one of the other guys that latched on because he, I guess, was in the lounge act before Eric joined. And so Eric lost the right, at least in England, to tour with the name The Animals.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a very hard time early on. He was getting, money was being stolen from him. They actually made a lot of money, went broke, and then had to make it all again.
Yeah.
He actually left the country and went to Mexico for a while because he had lawsuits against him. And,
yes.
Then made his way back.
Yes.
And
but that whole sound that he instilled into that band, that was him. I mean, that was him.
He was absolutely the driving force behind that band. I mean,
he said he hung up. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, a lot of bands, we know all the names of the members, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and there's always some little changes here and there. But you know what? How many people know the names of all the members of the Animals? I mean, Eric Burdon was just the dominant member of the Animals.
Well, I don't. I just said that guy that was in the band before, they're not one of the, every member of the Who. John Paul, George, Ringo is one word, right?
One word, exactly. It's the
know?
same with Led Zeppelin or the.
But
Well,
I enjoyed Eric Burdon and the Animals, and I'm not saying
oh
the other
yeah. Well,
musicians
see, that's what
didn't have input.
that's what I went by is what have I enjoyed the most over the years. I
Yeah,
mean, I've known of Eric Burdon and the Animals, the Who, and the Kinks going back to the mid '60s. But which one did I enjoy the most, and which one did I listen to the most? And
right.
it's hands down Eric Burdon and the Animals. If I
Yeah,
enjoyed the Kinks more, I'd have a shelf full of their albums. I don't have any Kinks albums. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I want to get a couple of Kinks albums,
right,
but I do have 4 or 5 Who albums, which would be
right.
the reason why I would put them above the Kinks for my own personal listening pleasure, you know. And we've been getting other names thrown out too. I have read Spencer Davis high on the list, the Spencer Davis group, and some of the others that have been the chat's been bringing up.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me start the chat again. Forget about Spencer. Okay, all right. Okay, we'll forget about him.
I think he said forgot.
JB, my buddy J. Have you ever heard JB Sharp? Oh no, you don't go on Facebook, do you?
No.
JB.
I have a Facebook. I announce my videos, and that's it. Facebook is such a. I don't care for it as a platform. I gave up on that years ago. It's
Okay.
only part of the channel,
Right.
you know, to promote the channel now. That's the only reason I'm still there.
Yeah, well, you know, Michael, I liked it for one reason. I moved out of Henderson, Nevada when I was 18 years old. Never looked
Yeah.
back. I mean, I still attended class reunions back there out in Las Vegas and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I wound up refriending so many of the people I grew up with. You know, it was a small town, Henderson,
Yep.
just outside of Vegas, and we all knew each other. You know, we went to elementary school, junior high, high school together, and stuff like that. And
Right.
but I've lost contact with so many of them aren't around. A lot of them have even passed away. But I'm in contact with so many of them now, and that was what turned me on about Facebook. And of course, I advertise my show there. I advertise my construction business, and I advertise my real estate business.
Yeah.
And I'm not on it
Well-
nearly as much as I used to. I just don't have the time anymore. Right.
Then you wind up with 45,000 friends, and you don't know any of them. You might know 50 of them.
No,
You
that's
know,
exactly right. I've got like
And then it becomes meme after meme after meme. And I'm not a big meme
right,
guy, you know.
right. No, I
And
hear
then
you.
the
I hear you.
and then the commercials and the way that's all set up there, and I just don't trust the platform anymore. I really
Yeah.
don't.
No, I
you
hear
know.
you. Okay, so
I use it, and I haven't given it up because it is a tool. Because I do know there's a lot of people that are on there.
oh yeah. No, it is a
But for
tool.
me personally,
Right.
I don't utilize it. You know,
Right. No, I hear you.
I've lost touch with my family through Facebook. You know,
Right.
I mean, what started off, man, those first years on the platform was great. Oh,
Right.
I was on 3 or 4, 5, 6 times a day. You know,
It gets kind of addicting. Hey, I want to
and then
comment
it
on
morphed.
something Sean McCall said. Don't forget Chas Chandler. Yeah, I mentioned him earlier when we were going through all my Eric Burdon notes and stuff like that. Chas Chandler, of course, was a bass player for the Animals. I believe he was even there before Eric Burdon came aboard. There was a band, the Animals, before there was Eric Burdon and the Animals. Anyway, Chas Chandler wanted to do other things. He wanted to manage bands and produce records and stuff like that. He left and actually signed Jimi Hendrix, you know, and took him to London and made him a star. So yeah, that's the Chas Chandler story. And there was some other people that he made stars too. But Jimi Hendrix is the one that stands out. He wound up with three top 10 hits on the UK charts over there. You know, Hey Joe, I think it was Hey Joe, Foxy Lady, and The Wind Cries Mary. One of them was at number 3. I think it was Hey Joe, and the other 2 were at number 6 on the UK charts. Yeah. Chas Chandler pretty much he got Hendrix's real start. You know, Hendrix still struggled when he got back to the States. He didn't get the reception he got in England. It took a while to get going there. But anyway, yeah. So Chas Chandler is a big part of the music scene, isn't he? Monkeys were better, Dan. Okay. So anyway, so I went through a lot of stuff. I started with the British invasion and how I would rank after the Beatles and Stones. Then we went through a little bio, of him growing up and when he finally came to America and what they were doing. He played at the Monterey Pop, during the kind of the psychedelic era, and he contributed a lot of songs to the psychedelic sound back then as well. And the war protest songs too. We got to get out of this place. Sky Pilot, two songs I absolutely love. We're all part of the protest movement, the Vietnam War protest movement. And well, had breakup bands. He had 3 marriages, has 1 daughter from his first marriage, and he actually played at the 50th Monterey Pop Festival. Also played at one of the first ones. It may have been the first one. I don't know. It was first, second, or third. Then he just played at the 50th, and that was pretty amazing. So, what is your take on Eric Burdon overall? You would rank him maybe 4, did you say?
Yeah, but as far as frontmen, there were 2 frontmen that I considered, in the '60s that they went beyond the mod.
Right.
The Beatles, for the longest time presented themselves very modular, very mod, and
Right. Yeah.
but the Stones with Keith Richards and the Animals with Eric Burdon, to me, they both had one characteristic, and there was a reason why the girls went for him. Yeah. Now with Mick Jagger, he had a certain sexiness. He was not an ugly guy. He was, I wouldn't say he was a dead knockout, but uh, he was probably the better looking between the two. Because
Yeah.
here comes Eric Burdon, and if you look at all the old videos, and I remember this clearly, yeah, talk about acne stricken. All right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Lots of facial blemishes. So why was this guy considered so damn sexy? And I'll tell you why. First of all, him and Jagger had one key link. They had that smirk, Royce. They had that. They'd look at the camera and smirk,
Yeah.
and you knew when you were watching them, you were in on the joke. All right. That was for the girls, though. But as a male fan, I went, all right. Yeah.
Right.
You,
Right.
you see, they were both bad boys.
Oh, yeah.
And what
The Stones were
teenage
the bad
girl,
boys.
what teenage girl is not tempted by a bad boy?
No, no, no. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I mean, that's yeah.
So
They
I
usually
think,
wind up. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, it was, and for the most part, see, with Jagger, I think it was more of a what would you call it? An instinct, a nervousness. He'd almost smirk because he was nervous at being there, and he looked at the camera and oh my gosh! But it got cocky very quickly. Eric Burdon was cocky right out. He was making love to that camera like it was the girl, and he didn't care, and he was. And his attitude dripped with the guys wanted to be like him.
Right.
He was what, 5'6", 7, 8, 9
Right.
ish, and
Right.
not a big guy,
Right.
but you just knew that guy punched the guy in the face out of the whole group before even the 6-foot+ guys got into it. He was a scrapper, and you could tell. So the guys loved him.
Right.
They knew this wasn't. I knew it because I came up not quite as Dickensian as he did, but I came up on the wrong side of the tracks, brother. All right, and I can tell you, you learn to scrap or you learn to nap.
Absolutely.
Bro.
I don't know whether I came up on the wrong side of the tracks or I worked my way over to them.
Yeah. Oh, we always.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always had like friends with money.
Right.
Fred Lazinski was. I didn't know him very well, but he had this cool 351 Mustang, red with black trim. All right, and I'm a long hair.
Right.
I'm a head. You had greasers and heads. All
Greasers
right.
and heads,
And
right?
greasers did not mean Hispanic. All right.
Right.
Greasers meant they spent most of their time under the hood and they had cool cars. And they did it because A, they liked to work on them, and B, it got girls. Well, it didn't escape us poor, long haired, leaping gnomes. Hey, there's a reference for you. That
Yeah.
girls like cars. So
Spill
maybe
the
we,
Eric. Spill the wine. Eric
yeah,
Burdon War.
yeah. So Fred and I both benefited from each other's because he was just cool enough to be with the heads, and I was almost cool enough to be in his car. And
Well, you know.
I was always there on 4th Street every Friday and Saturday night, though, I'll
Oh
tell you.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely had our hangouts too. The main one was called the Polar Queen, and this went back decades before my time. You wanted to find out where the party was, or if there was going to be a fight, from high school or something. It was like behind the Polar Queen. You hang out there on Friday and Saturday night to find out where the party's going to be. Sooner or later, someone's going to pull in and tell you where the party's going to be. But we were touching on something a minute ago that's kind of significant. Eric Burns was a pretty hardcore blues band, but when I was doing what happened was when I was doing my show recently, a couple of weeks ago, Jimi Hendrix opening for the Monkees, a made-for-television boys band, and it kind of on the surface you look at that and you go, what? What the hell's that all about? But it kind of made sense to both parties because the Monkees were looking for some street cred. They wanted to be considered real musicians, okay, not a made-for-television boys band. And
I want to be a real boy.
and Hendrix now was not getting a lot of traction when he got here back from England, where he was a big star. So the management suggested, well, listen, let's pair up Hendrix and the Monkees. It was the Monkees' idea. They'd seen Hendrix. And they thought it would be a great idea to give them street cred. They're traveling with Jimi Hendrix. Plus, they get to watch him play every night. And Hendrix's people said, well, you know what? This kind of makes sense. We're going to get Jimmy in front of an audience that isn't listening to him, a bunch of. But it turned that one. And Eric Burdon was cited in that same article as doing the same thing. He got over here. He was looking for mass appeal, and he started touring with pop bands. Now, in the case of Jimi Hendrix, it didn't work out at all because Jimmy would get up and he'd start playing Foxy Lady, and the girls would start screaming, Foxy Davy! Then he tried to get them involved in it, and they would just, all they did was scream for their idols through his whole set. He finally flipped them off, threw off his guitar, and stomped off. He left on the 7th show. I think it was like a 28-show tour that he joined. But
I'm surprised he didn't quit the first night.
Yeah, I guess maybe he was hoping they'd warm up to him a little bit. But the other funny part of that is the parents that were taking their daughters, their young, teenage daughters, to see the Monkees were sitting through Jimi Hendrix, and at times he looked like he was having sex with his Fender Stratocaster, and they were all pissed off about that too. So he just flipped everybody off and just walked off the stage and said, "I'm done with this."
Yep.
Anyway, so some of this makes strange bedfellows. People getting together for probably all the wrong reasons that seemed to make sense at the time.
What would your favorite track by Eric Burdon be?
Well, forever since I was 14 years old, playing an acoustic guitar with strings like bridge cables. I mean, you're lucky you could even you had to build calluses up really bad on your fingers to be able to even be able to play this thing. I didn't realize how nice a guitar could play until later on. But anyway, so it was always House of the Rising Sun. But I have to tell you, we've got to get out of this place, and some of these other songs, even Sky Pilot, I love all those songs.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. I think they're all wonderful tracks.
And you know what? He's got a voice. I mean, who would you even compare his voice with? Okay. I would compare it with, like, for uniqueness and quality, I'd have to compare it with people like Otis Redding, for example, and because Otis Redding's got lyrics that are just like so emotional. You practically start crying when he's singing a song. You know what I'm saying? And Eric Burdon, I would have to put like right behind. I don't know if I could put anybody Mick Jagger, John Lennon. I don't think I could put any of their vocals. To me, don't touch Eric Burdon's voice. They're great.
Well,
They're great on their own. Don't get me wrong.
yeah. As a blues singer, I'd say that. But no, John Lennon and McCartney are two of the greatest vocalists of the 20th century, and that's just all there is to it. I mean,
hey, Michael, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, but in a more specialized way, yeah, Eric Burdon, he fits. It's like he almost fits into the black sound, more than he does to the so-called white sound trying to imitate the black sound. He sounds more authentic than most white singers say, because that was his whole idea. Is he purposely says, I'm bringing in electric blues and rock.
Right.
That was the whole idea.
Absolutely.
Of the Animals from the get-go. As soon as they changed the name to the Animals, they were an electric blues rock band. And so out of all the and that's his words, not mine.
Right.
All right. So if you're going to argue that, you're going to have to argue with Eric Burdon. But
no.
I like that title. I think that fits. And if you're going to, especially the early 60s electric blues-based rock bands, as far as just kicking ass and yet still sounding, what would I call that? Pop. Yeah. All right. Even the Stones didn't catch on as quick as Eric Burdon and the Animals. Right. All right. The Animals had it, the whole package right away. The Stones had to figure out their gig because basically at first, even when they invaded America, folks, the Stones were a blues cover band. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
That's what they did. And they were good at what they did. They were excellent. But this was, let's develop our own material. Let's develop here's the sound. Here's the package. As clear and concise and as easily identifiable as the Beatles sound. Right?
Oh, no, totally identifiable. You're not going to.
So they're monsters, right, Royce? They're monsters.
Absolutely, with anybody. We're getting great comments from the chat too. Dr. Rick said Sky Pilot and Monterey are his favorites, and right here we got Burdon was one of the greatest white bluesmen of all time. Also Joe Cocker and Sean. I agree with that 100%, brother.
I do too, Sean.
Paul Rogers has a great voice too. Absolutely.
Oh God, one of my top vocalists of all times. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I do too, Caitlin.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That song I Am the Walrus.
Yeah.
John Lennon nicknamed Eric Burdon the Eggman because of a situation that John Lennon had heard about where apparently fellatio was being performed with food on Eric Burdon. So he named him the Eggman.
Well, John, what John actually did is he was trying to encourage Eric to tell him every detail of this egg being poured over him while he's butt naked in the kitchen by a beautiful woman that ended up even more entangled than that. And what John said was, get it, Eggman, get it. He was egging him on.
Right. But
I love it. What a story.
That's a great story. That is a great story.
He was egging him on. And, oh, good Lord. John Lennon, see, he knew in the moment what he was talking about. History just revealed how smart John Lennon could be, in the moment when he was at the top of his game. What a wordsmith, even in just conversation.
Yeah, Angela, I've been a fan of
I
Joe
do too,
Cocker
Angela.
forever. I mean,
Yep.
since I saw him at Woodstock, I'd have to put it that way. There was a lot of bands that became prominent from Woodstock.
Yeah. Hey, I
Santana.
loved
Yeah.
his performance and his singing in Across the Universe, the movie. That
Okay.
was all
Yeah.
based on Beatles songs, and they intertwined all the Beatles songs into a story. You
Okay.
know, Jude was one of the main characters, right? And the whole story. If you have not seen this movie, folks, and you love the Beatles music, you
I
got to
have.
go see it. What was it? Efron? Efron was the
Okay.
director. I think she's a fantastic director. But Joe Cocker plays three different characters, all within one song. He's only in the length of the song, right?
Right.
And as this new black young guitarist is coming into town, who later will be kind of a Hendrix-like guitarist,
Right.
right?
Right.
As he's coming into town, Joe Cocker singing, what is it? Juju eyeballs he got,
Right.
come
Right.
to, or
Come together. Yeah.
yeah, come together. And he plays a pimp. He plays a homeless person in a bus station, and he plays this know it on the streets hipster that saves the guy at the last minute. But a beautiful performance and a collage story within a broader story, and that could be just a video on YouTube and quite entertaining in its own.
Oh,
So yeah,
absolutely.
kudos.
What was the name of that movie again?
Across the universe.
Across the
Across the
Hey,
universe.
Michael, did you hear any of mine? There's probably some new people that have joined us, but did you hear any of my story about Eric Burdon and Steve McQueen?
I was coming in and out,
Okay.
trying to get lights, camera, action, and the girls. I got to thank you. The girls in the green room have been great, Royce. But no, I'm just kidding you. Anyway, I was trying to get together, so I was in and out of your conversation. That they had a race, and they went down to Peggy Sue's.
Peggy Sue's Diner, yeah.
Yeah.
And they also
You know
brought
what
the
you
desert
were
on their
describing?
bikes. What's that?
I just threw away two placards about this big that I had originally gotten for the backdrop of my studio. And it's James Dean, of course.
Of course.
Elvis Presley. Who else is in this scene?
It's got
James Dean.
Okay, James. Okay.
Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, and Humphrey Bogart.
Oh,
okay.
Humphrey Bogart.
You know these paintings,
yeah.
because these were the icons from the 50s that turned into the 60s.
No, I know. I have one of those posters too, with all the icons at a bar, kind of a thing.
Right.
Marilyn and Hendrix, and
I had just
from a later period, but
I had just tossed that maybe an hour or two ago because I just went, nah, it's too cheeky, But the thing is, Royce, when you were talking about that story, that painting, those kind of paintings came to mind as you were, telling the story of them racing down and everything. And by the way, Steve McQueen is the world's first action hero. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. The Great Escape. What a great movie that was.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, Sand Pebbles. There's so many. I can't think of all the names now because he's been gone for a long time. He died of cancer, and I still remember him on TV talking about the treatments he's getting in Mexico and how they're doing miracles down there and all this stuff because the doctors here couldn't help him anymore.
Yeah.
That was very sad. Very sad.
Yeah, got him fast too. It got him really fast. It wasn't years and years of fighting it or anything like that. I mean, he was here one day and he was gone. He was making movies and then the next year he was gone, and in the tabloids for the next 10 years. That's how big of an actor he was.
Oh, no, he was huge. He was a great actor.
Yeah.
Great actor. He always played the best roles too,
Oh, well, what was it that he had? Steve McQueen had a Western show. What was that? What was that show?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't he have like a sawed-off shotgun? They kind of took that idea from an old John Wayne El Dorado movie where James Caan is a great knife thrower, but he can't shoot for shit, right? And
Right.
so they go visit the Swede. This is El Dorado, by the way, folks. John Wayne, James Caan's first major movie. And they go to the Swede. Yeah, I think I got something to show you. And he brings out a sawed-off shotgun that is now about, here's the handle, and it stops there. They start, sawed off the stock, and
Oh,
it goes out to about here, and it's got two shotgun shells, and you just aim it in the general direction, and it blows away anyway. And so,
scattergun. Yeah.
yeah, so they go into town. Years later, I think they redid this movie with Ricky Nelson playing the kid, But those are the two movies that John Wayne, the one movie he made twice,
Right.
with very little difference in the plot. And I love them both. I love them both.
Oh yeah. Well, let's see. We had a comment here. Let's see. Steve McQueen was the king of cool.
Yes, he was.
Very, very cool.
Well, he was what he was, man.
And a genuine badass.
Yep. Yep.
Oh yeah, Bullet. Bullet was a great movie. San Francisco, all those hills. Oh my God. Watching that would make you dizzy.
Well, wasn't that I'm not sure if Gone in 60 Seconds was before that, the original. But wasn't that kind of the first major movie with a car chase?
Car chase in San Francisco in the hills?
Yeah. All the car chases you're watching right now came from that.
Kind of makes sense. Yeah, I think I remember something about that.
Yeah.
So anyone like the Two Doors albums without Jim? Now, that would be like me listening to no, I never really, I know they made a couple, but I never paid any attention to them.
Me neither.
Watching the Animals without Eric Burdon to me is like, I guess, watching the Doors without Jim Morrison.
Right, exactly.
Powerful, dominant voice,
Yeah.
He had a great voice.
And they all contributed to the band. All right. So I'm not cutting them down.
They were all good musicians, and they wouldn't have been there,
But
and they all made it. Yeah.
He's the linchpin. He's the identifier.
Yeah, Jim Morrison wasn't writing the guitar parts and the organ parts. Right. Those were talented musicians writing those. I wouldn't actually mind hearing some of that. That just never occurred to me to go out and find it. But if I did, I might want to listen to it. Maybe I'll look it up online, and listen to it.
I just never have, because when I was ready to buy my next album,
right,
that would have been like dead last on the list, and I there was like a dozen albums before those kind of albums that I would have bought that I still couldn't take home that day. I usually bought my albums, sometimes one at a time, never more than three at a time, on a big payday or something like that.
On a big payday, yeah.
And so there was so much great music. And when when Jim Morrison died, and the Doors were no longer ever going to be really the Doors again.
Right.
There was still great new music by other bands that would become legends of the 70s and 80s and 90s, right? So I was always, I can only buy so much music and consume so much music. That's why everybody goes, what's your channel about? Are you a rock historian or something? No, I'm not. I'm about a 100-trick pony. There's maybe 100 top bands that I'm really aware of. I've got some knowledge there. And anything that I don't know, I research for my videos, But the bands I do know, I was a fan. I looked up their stories. The Beatles, I can't tell you how many Beatles books I've bought over the years telling their story.
Right.
I got to see how this angle of the story was,
I'm kind of getting into doing stuff like that right now. I just bought a Geezer Butler book, and that's a fun story,
Yeah, and I haven't read that yet, but I hear it's quite a tell-all, isn't it?
I think he has more than one now. Into the Void is this one.
Yeah.
It's memoirs, but there's also a book he had. I think every member of that band has a book.
Oh God. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. But I hear in his latest book, he pretty much said that him and Ozzy never really got along too much in the band.
I didn't
It was
realize until the book that Geezer was. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Geezer
no, that's all
basically
right.
was the main writer of the lyrics.
Oh yeah, he was.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I remember in one of my videos, I was covering the Paranoid album. And on that album, there's actually one song that he didn't write the lyrics for, and Ozzy wrote them. And that's the fairies wear boots and you got, you know?
Funny we're talking about this because
Ozzy wrote those lyrics, man.
I recently bought several Black Sabbath albums. And last night I listened to Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Volume 4, and Paranoid, all last night back to back.
Oh yeah. That's a good. You know what? At the time, now I don't hold it quite in this high of level now, although it's still one of their best albums. But Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, when it came out, I thought, okay, they've outdone themselves this time. I thought it was a clearly better record than the preceding records. Okay. Yeah, and as I've listened to it, no, it's not. But it's still good.
No, they're all good. But I went back to Paranoid as my number one, and I was having a hard time deciding which was my favorite song between Iron Man and Paranoid. Initially, it was Paranoid, but upon really paying attention to the lyrics, that story about the guy that went into the future, saw the apocalypse, Iron Man, then came back, but on the way back, he turned into an Iron Man that couldn't talk and communicate. He was back there trying to warn everybody in the world about the apocalypse, and nobody was paying any freaking attention to him. He finally got flipped out, just went on a rampage killing people. Well, and I don't think that
so
ever.
So by trying to prevent the apocalypse,
he was starting to
causes it. I love it.
Right.
Yeah, I covered that on my video as well. That whole story. I didn't even know that it was that involved. I'll tell you why.
It's not always easy to hear the lyrics,
Yeah. No, I'll tell you. I knew it when I first. The reason I liked it was at the time I bought that album, 1972, man. All right, 72. I'm 17 years old. I'm a comic book aficionado. A Marvel comic book.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I thought the freaking song was about Tony Stark. So cool.
I used to buy all the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk. I mean, all of those.
My big collection was the Avengers.
Once I graduated
the Avengers
from Casper and Archie.
I never was into comic books until 64. I bought a few Batman and Supermans. I would occasionally over the years buy Batmans, but kind of gave up on he's too powerful, too goody two shoes, same old plot in every book. He's just too powerful. Right. There's kryptonite. Oh, so he can weaken when? Well, when we need him to weaken. Okay. So we're not going to get a great storyline there. But Batman, depending on the writers, always was intriguing. And the only one that I was really interested in after I was in 5th grade, or 4th grade. Now, in 4th grade, Spider-Man came out.
Oh, yeah.
I went,
the crazy thing, I was a huge fan of the Spider-Man comic book, but I never really went to see any of the Spider-Man movies. I don't really understand it myself, but I just didn't,
Yeah. I did.
Everything,
Yeah. Now, he's not my favorite character in Marvel, but he's one of my favorites. But see, here's the thing. I think a lot of us original rock fans from the classic rock era, you wonder, it, why it seems like you're tempted to say, okay, Boomer, is
Right.
you have to understand
Okay.
there
I know
was
I've
a
heard you say
pop,
that.
yeah, there was a pop culture at that
Right.
time
Oh yeah.
that has been mimicked in movies, but
Sure.
never duplicated. See, it was a serious pop culture. Your average rock fan, it wasn't uncommon that they also collected comic books and were reading Catcher in the Rye
Right.
and reading underground literature, uh, and probably at their most liberal selves of their lives. Now, whether they stayed there or they got more conservative as the years went along, we were all kind of a
You know,
young liberal kind
don't.
of make love, not war kind of thing. We bought into it. And guess what? We made a lot of mistakes, but we changed the world.
Oh yeah. Hey,
What's
Michael.
your generation doing? You know?
Absolutely nothing. And let me ask you a question. Okay, if you had been, um, okay, back in your Marvel comic days where you were into all that, and
Yeah.
the band Kiss had come out, do you think there's a chance you would have been a Kiss fan?
Now, I've said this before. It's amazing that I was not a Kiss fan with my
Okay,
background. And the
right.
reason is I saw their stupid ass movie, Royce, and I went, I'd rather watch the Hardy Boys cartoons that are on out. Or even worse, I'd rather watch the Hardy Boys with Sean and what's his name, you know,
Right,
who
right.
were the worst Hardy Boy. I'm a Hardy Boy. I collected Hardy Boys
Okay.
when I was a kid. I
What?
had all the gray hardbound that you saw before
Yeah,
they started coming out with the colorful
right,
covers, and it would
right.
have two embossed teenagers, their shadows with a flashlight, and it was just their blackened forms on a gray book. And I
Hey,
had to have that gray book. All right. So I
right,
love the Hardy Boys, and then watched that get ruined about 1,000 times too.
right, right. Hey, Michael. Let's answer this question from the chat. Dan asks, if you had to evacuate your place right away, what Sabbath album are you grabbing? Now, I'll tell you something. I have had to do that. We've had two major fires up here. I live out in the West Hills of Atascadero. It used to be a ranch that was split up into small acreage for people to build custom homes on. And the first fire we had up here, I sent my wife and kids down the hill, and they hit a place so smoky they almost couldn't get through, and she almost ran up an embankment. It was getting so smoky. But I was up on the roof, and I have pictures of it with a water hose, and there was a wall of fire coming to me from multiple different directions, and there were, the air tankers were dropping the red borate on them and stuff like that. I guess I was kind of going down with the ship. I just finished building the house. But years later, we had another one. It wasn't that many years later, and a friend of mine showed up with a huge horse trailer, and we started loading things into it. Now, if I could only grab one Sabbath album, that's kind of complicated because Paranoid, my copy of Paranoid is an OG, an original pressing. So it'd be hard to leave that behind. But I got to tell you, that would be the one. That would have to be the one that I would take. How about you, Michael?
Oh, Sabbath 4.
Oh, Sabbath 4. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They're all good.
yeah. That's right. It's
If you threw Ozzy's solo in, just Ozzy Osbourne,
yeah.
because Ozzy's really the voice of Sabbath that I like. I never really got into the Ronnie James Dio thing.
Me neither.
I do have one, but I actually ordered it by mistake. I thought I was getting Ozzy.
I just was never interested. I never bought a single Sabbath album with Ronnie Dio. I've heard him. He's a great singer. I just didn't care for it. Yeah.
But like I said, Ozzy was the voice of Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
So when I put an Ozzy album
Yep.
on, it's almost like I'm still listening to Black Sabbath, And,
Yeah.
and he's always got a star-studded cast. I mean, that last album he did, Patient Number 9, I mean, you've got Eric Burdon on it. You've got the cast of people playing on Jeff Beck is just almost insane.
And it's a great album.
And I was going to say that. I would even consider that if you were lumping the two together, because I listened to that. I've got the double album set in red vinyl, and
Yep.
it is epic. It's
Yep.
epic. I mean, it hasn't slipped a bit. And then
Yeah.
you've got
And I'll tell
then
you
you've got
another album that Sabbath does that doesn't get enough love, and it would probably be this my second favorite is Black Sabbath by
yeah,
Black Sabbath.
yeah, their self-titled very first album is great.
The
Absolutely
first
great.
song
The
alone.
first two songs blew me away.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, but the album has got, if that first song doesn't get you, then, just take the needle off and look for another album. Because, I mean, that song grabs you. It's matter of fact, Royce,
It really
think about
does.
that. That song's a whole movie. Isn't that song like those ABC Sunday night at the movies we used to get where it was this
Yeah.
week's horror story?
Right,
Yeah, and
right.
ABC especially used to always put, they'd have Williams, Shatner, and Kingdom of the Smack. Or they'd have what's her name who played the Ghost of Mrs. Muir, married to another TV actor, and the house. They move into a ranch, and the house is haunted. Right? I mean, in the late '60s and '70s, we were inundated on television with this. Right? And that first song is a better story than all of those movies, with the exception of Night Stalker.
That is a great song.
Oh, it's a horror story.
Right.
Satan is in it, but he's the bad guy. And and Ozzy will never sound more personal in any Black Sabbath album than that first song. You hear him, he is the victim.
It's just,
and he's oh God, no, Elijah. I mean, good Lord, he's in pain. Someone get that man a lifesaver,
Right.
Lord, love it.
I just got that first self-titled album by Black Sabbath for the very first time. It's the first time I've actually owned it.
Oh, and, I love it.
When I played it, when I first got it, it was like that first song just really, really knocked my head off, and the second song was almost equally as good.
Yeah. It's you know what? Great Sabbath albums are like Floyd albums, like Beatle albums, like Zeppelin albums. They're not to be played on a playlist with this track from that album and that track from this album. Right. Although I have such playlists, I do. Because sometimes I'm in the mood not to listen to just one band. But see, when I sit down, and I never do this in the car unless I'm going to be driving like 5 hours by myself, I'll put on a whole album. So in the car, I do playlists, right? But when I sit down and I listen to an album, it's from beginning to end, just like you should be doing, folks. Right? It's an artistic statement, and you do it disservice by, putting it on in the background as you make soup. Okay, it's an artistic statement. You don't make soup while you're looking at the Mona Lisa, do you?
No, but I'll tell you one thing right now, Michael. I used to skip around a lot maybe there was only 2, 3, 4 songs I liked on a CD. But I've gotten to the point, the only ones I listen to anymore, I seem to like from beginning to end. And the only time I start skipping around is like, let's say I've got like a Led Zeppelin 4 in or something like that. I get to the point where it's been in my car for like 2 freaking months. I haven't changed it. Then I'll skip around a little bit, and sometimes I'll play a song 2 or 3 times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But for the most part anymore, I just put them in and let them play because I'm really just listening to stuff that I really, really like.
Right.
I'm not buying anything else.
And like I say, I do the playlist thing myself, I know you're just skipping tracks. But I have a playlist that I go and I'll put it on a scramble. So it'll go from like, say, a whole lot of love to Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. From that to Mama Told Me Not to Come to the Rolling Stones, Tuesday Ruby to Revolution by the Beatles.
I haven't made any of those in a long time, but in one of my 3 or 4 or 5 CD cases, I could find a bunch that I made the same way. I would just, I'd have my iTunes catalog and I would just burn them on CDs.
Yeah.
and just put the songs I like from various artists. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah. These days I put it, I've got my playlist on my phone, and I just hook my phone into the truck's computer and play it from there. And
Right, right.
I've got I've got a decent system in there, nothing special.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
but you're talking about a guy who listened to music on a 3-inch oval speaker, just like Royce did, because that's what cars came with.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And
Well,
no inside cone, by the way, for a
no.
tweeter. It was just
Hey,
a general,
right.
speaker.
Hey,
And we
Michael,
still heard amazing things, right?
Michael, is this a statement by Gary Spring? After your own heart here.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh God. Uh, uh, I'm running out of Motley Greed jokes. All right.
Motley Crue jokes.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. But I had one in store for you, Gary. No, God, what they are the ultimate. I consider them the ultimate white trailer trash band of all time. All right. And I say that coming from a long line of white trailer trash. All right. So I know from where I speak, folks, and I'm going to tell you, these morons that can't sing anymore, can't drum,
Yeah, well,
they're disloyal. They're disloyal morons. And now they have an opportunistic guitarist, John Five, who came from a band that, by the way, I had some respect for, because I like, well, I'm not in love with his movies, but every once in a while, the nasty part of me gets in and watches, what's his name? And so John Five, quickly jumped ship over there, but of course he does. And then we've been inundated with John Five interviews. I haven't even made videos on this because it disgusts me so much.
right.
Where he's talking, well, Mick Mars is a good guy, good guy, good guy. And then all of a sudden it's morphing into, well, he had problems and problems and problems. He's a fucking echo
Yeah, let's
for the
welcome
three morons,
let's welcome old guys music and stuff.
I love the
I'm
old
not
guy with
I'm
music
not
and
catch,
stuff.
I'm not catching everything in the chat, so he may have been here for a little while, but I haven't seen
Wow.
his name go by yet. But
Yeah, I go to his channel all the time. I'm a subscriber. I love his unapologetic approach. I'm just an old guy, and he kind of plays that.
I'm going to have to start doing the same. And so let's all welcome. Hey guys, let's all welcome old guys music and stuff. Let's all go check his channel out.
Yes, indeed.
Hey, Michael's recommendations, all I need. And
he's great.
I'll be coming your way, brother, and hitting the subscribe button if I haven't already. So thanks for showing up. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, he's talked about why I'm through with the vinyl community, and then he talks about, well, I was through with the vinyl community before, but now I'm really through with the vinyl. And he talks about things. I think him and I can't be too far off in age, or you, Royce, because he's around our. He might have us by a couple of years. I don't know, but you can tell by his history, and I just as an old guy that shouts at clouds, I love a fellow cloud shouter. Yeah. I just love, and that's kind of his whole approach. And he's so real. He's so real. Right. He just says what's on his mind. Sometimes a very short video, but everybody go over there and sub him up and hit that bell notification. He's worth it. Yeah. But you got to get into his wry humor. If you're going to be a millennialist out there and get your feelings hurt, you got to have a sense of humor. Folks.
You got to have a sense of humor, right? Come on.
Yeah, but I get him. I love him. 72. All right, I'm 68, brother. I'll be 69 in about 5 months. So, you got me by about 3 years. I knew he was from pretty close to where you and I are. Royce is a little closer to you. Yeah. So, fantastic channel. I just love his whole personality. I don't, I don't get real enough on YouTube these days. My channel is a little bit more high gloss in my approach. I don't just open up a camera and start talking like this guy does. But I'm going to be doing some of those, especially for the Patreon part of my channel.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I have a bit of production and everything, but I try to make my channel. I don't write scripts. I write my notes if it's something I'm not up on. If it's a Beatle, type of video,
Right.
I don't even write notes. I just start talking,
Well, and
But then I
sometimes we can
edit
do that.
and
You know? A lot of times
Yeah.
when it comes to like anything to do with Led Zeppelin, I can do
Yeah.
the same thing, or Jimi Hendrix, I can do the same thing.
Right,
You
right.
can't do the same thing with all of them,
Right. No,
But,
sometimes you just got to do more research. But
got to do a lot more research.
this
Sometimes
guy,
it consumes your entire day before the show.
yeah. But this guy,
If
it's
not
almost
more.
like he comes off with a, almost a diary approach. That's what I love about his
Nice.
channel. He's real, and you know what? He makes sense to me.
Oh, sure.
Well,
look at Caitlin just subscribed already to him, and I do the same thing. When I'm
Right
on
on.
somebody's show, somebody will pop in, and I'll go up
Right.
here and do a quick search, and if I haven't subscribed to him, I'll subscribe to him.
Right. I agree with you. I'm still on, Royce. I just have to get over here, take care of something.
Look at Gary Spring loves Joe Walsh. Yesterday I bought another Joe Walsh album. That gives me 2 and a James Gang album with Joe Walsh.
Which Joe Walsh album did you buy?
You know what? I'd have to go dig it out again.
Oh.
I get them home, I clean them, and then I put them back, in alphabetical order, the best I can. Then I go to.
I love anything by Joe Walsh, whether it's with the Eagles, even though he's not a full-time Eagle.
Right.
But and I love him with the James Gang. But my favorite album that I can just listen to, it's his Abbey Road. I love Joe Walsh and Barnstorm, the Barnstorm album.
Yeah. Now I have that album. I have that one.
Isn't that just such a? Think of the production of that album, Royce. Oh my God!
It's highly regarded. It's great.
Oh yes, I love that. I saw him and Barnstorm at Winterland performing the album, and then went and bought it the next day. That's how I was introduced to that album. And he was a god. I just looked up, and it was back in the day you could walk right up to people. I mean, I was 3 feet away from him at Winterland. He was a lot higher up on the stage than me.
Yeah, he seems like a really down-to-earth guy.
But you know who I was really impressed with out of the Barnstorm band? The bassist, I forget his name, but that night I think he was playing a fretless bass, which, by the way, I used to play a fretless bass.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, I love the sound, to be able to slide up to a note like that and everything. And I went to a fretless bass based on old memories of Joe Walsh and Barnstorm playing at Winterland, playing the Barnstorm album. And the bass player was the first bass player that, Paul even didn't impress me like he did, because I was so familiar with Paul's lines and I could see how he was doing. And I was already trying to figure out some of them as a guitarist before, but I hadn't heard this album. And I just saw him and I went, I couldn't take my eyes off of him all night.
Wow. I'm a nerd for that stuff. Caitlin's a nerd for that stuff.
Yeah, she is. Oh, and Caitlin's show is magnificent, everybody. I've said it before. It's gotten better and better. Man, talk about, it's almost the Seinfeld YouTube channel. What she talks about could be anything and everything.
Right.
Doing good, Caitlin.
Yes, you are, Caitlin. Yes, you are. So let's see. Guys, I think I'm going to be wrapping the show up here. Joe Walsh just did a 1-week stint. Stephen Colbert's show a few months ago. He was looking and sounding great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So anyway, folks, I think we're getting close to, we've passed our time limit. So first of all,
I'm sorry I was so late, Royce.
Okay.
I think we kind of, it took us a while tonight to catch our rhythm, and it was because I
Right.
came in so late, but it was an emergency.
No. I hear you. I hear you. We all have them. I
Yeah.
was late. I might have had a better presentation if I hadn't been weed eating in the morning. But
You're a fast study, my man.
we have company coming, and I had no choice. But anyway, so first of all, I really enjoyed this show. I really enjoyed all the chatters. You guys make the show. I love having a live chat. Even when I do my shorter pre-recorded shows, I always do them with the live chat, just so we can, I can sit here, and it's actually more fun to sit here and interact when it's all pre-recorded. You have the time to do it. And
Right.
so anyway, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much. And Michael Nolan, the bottom line, fastest growing podcast I've ever seen in my life, because it's that good. It's growing fast.
Oh, thanks, boys.
Great. You're welcome. And you deserve every word of that. So anyway,
yeah,
folks,
it's really grown lately. I have no idea. It's really taken off. So
really doing
back
good.
to the old days, it had kind of gone. I mean, it was still doing wellish, but it was just kind of going along, and it started climbing good. So thank you.
But anyway, and that's what's going on in Royce's World today. Once again, thank you all very much for joining us. Good night, everybody. Good night, Michael. All right, guys. Good night.